Okay, we'll find our seat. Now, today we are going to focus on flow. It really just means change. So anything you experience that changes counts as flow. We'll label it flow. So in our mind, we can say flow. You can let me guide today, but if you do this on your own, you might label it flow or change. When something ends, that's flow. When something begins, that's flow. When something transforms from one state to another, that's flow or change. You might notice that just a part of a thing changes, that's also flow. So most of us will notice a lot of permanence in our experience. That's okay. Just notice today, though, we are using our concentration to focus in on those parts of our experience that are changing. So you can start just by noticing the ground, noticing your seat, getting solid. And that's a kind of feeling sensation. I want you to feel that solidity. And if you can right now, it's okay if it's not obvious to you. Just notice any changing element of that experience. So, what does that mean? Does it get heavier or lighter somewhere? Does it get hotter or cooler somewhere? Does something move from one location to another? Does some part of your experience move? Does something get bigger or smaller? If there's something uncomfortable, does it get more uncomfortable or less uncomfortable? If something feels really good, does that pleasure spread and expand and get more intense, or does it get less intense? You see, these are all aspects of our experience that are constantly modulating. They're constantly changing. This is what makes our reality, is all these variables shifting. As always, stay with resource in your meditation if you want to today. If you want to start being a little more focused on flow, we're going to move into the breath. Let's move into the breath in the belly. If you are not someone who belly breathes right now, if that's just not part of your natural breathing pattern right now in your life, then just move up a little higher until you really notice some part of your body that moves pretty clearly when you breathe. As always, we are not controlling the breath. If you need to, you can do one or two breaths where you make it happen so you can see what's going on. But after you've done that, just let the breath come in when it's ready to come in. And you will notice that the second the breath starts, change has started. Flow, flow. And maybe you'll notice different things. You'll notice the beginning of the breath. That's one flow. You might notice the expansion of the belly. You might notice a continuous expansion. So that's flow, 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 flow. You'll notice that expansion stops at some point. That stop is a change, flow. You might notice it starts to contract or let go or relax. That is another set of changes. And then that contraction ends, flow. Now, for those of you who have done a lot of breath meditation, you've already, of course, been noticing things that are flowing. But just notice, is this a little bit different of an experience when I'm focused on the changing nature itself? What you might start to notice is that you're sort of rolling with the present moment when you're focused on flow. Rather than using the mind to catch an experience and say, there's a little bit of breath, you're now rolling with the breath itself. Your attention is watching that breath change, and you're sort of rolling with that change, 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 change. And every now and then you won't notice a change, right? That's okay. It'll seem like something isn't changing. That's fine. And then what do? You just wait for a change to appear. And then you start to notice change again. Change, change, change. And I remind you, could also use alternatively the label gone and just notice when things disappear. If that's a little bit easier, then just notice when things disappear. So for instance, as you're breathing in, there's an expansion and then it stops expanding, gone. That's the end of that expansion. It disappeared, that sensation of expanding. You breathe back out, you let go of that breath, it ends, gone. Do not anticipate the change. Experience the change and then label it. Your breath might stop at a place you don't think it's going to stop. It might expand and deepen deeper than you thought it was going to. Wait for the breath to change and notice the experience. This is a very good way to start noticing more and more subtle ways that your mind is controlling your experience. Because your mind really wants to label and hold fixed things so that it can understand and keep track. When you start to pay attention to the changing nature of everything, the mind has to loosen a little bit more. If this is new for you, if you're going to do this on your own, you might just want to stay with one part of the breath. You can choose a different part than the belly if you want, and just do a whole sit, just noticing the changing nature of the breath. I'm going to take us a little further afield today, but if today you're not feeling like that, there's so much to explore just in the breath and flow. So for instance, the next thing I will guide us to do is to expand our attention to include the whole of the breathing pattern. From the base of the belly, the base of your body, the perineum, all the way up to the nostrils. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. You can just pick one part of the breath and stay with it. But now we're opening our mind to any change in our whole breathing body. If you can keep your attention wide enough, it'd be really hard not to be noticing change the whole time. Something's constantly changing in this big part of the body, obviously changing. What's beautiful about the breath is you get easy parts of the breath to notice change and then more difficult. So you get to practice multiple levels of this practice. As the breath begins, it's obvious that's a change. But as the breath ends and you wait for the breath to come in again, especially if your breath is slowed down, it might seem like everything goes perfectly still. That's a beautiful place to notice any change you can. The obvious places to start with, where is the breath begin? Where's the first place I notice it begin? But even before it begins, there's a process happening in that pause, a vibration of heat, of settling, of relaxation. After you've done this for a little bit, maybe notice, is there a part of the breath that I never notice? I'm not noticing changing, that seems numb or stuck or still? And maybe just give that a little extra attention as you breathe in and notice maybe, can you expand your experience of flow to the whole of the breathing apparatus? What do I mean by that? I mean the nostrils, the sinuses, the back of the throat itself, the chest, all the way around the rib cage, the solar plexus, the belly, the lower belly, the perineum. The truth is the whole body is involved in breath, but those are the parts that are obviously change in the musculature, and the shoulders should be included in that. And then, yeah, is there some part of that whole list where you're not noticing change? Just give that a little extra attention. See if you can't notice when the breath begins there and when it ends there. Low, low, low. Now we're using the word flow, and that could be a little bit of a lie because it could be jagged changes or jumps or discrete changes. That's okay too. Those are flows. Those are just ways you're experiencing the flow of reality. Again, this may be a good place for you to stay. If you want, I'm going to let you expand to the whole of the physical body. So now we're just sitting and waiting for changes in our body. The breath is still going to be the most obvious a lot of the time, but suddenly there might be a pain, or there might be a pleasure, or there might be a sudden heat or a coolness, or something moves in the rest of the body. And you can notice that as well. Your heart is beating, that's a constant change. That means the blood is flowing through every part of your body. Your skin is kind of tingling because it's constantly experiencing the air, your clothes. And so it's like the breath is a big wave on the surface of the ocean, but the ocean itself is also constantly shifting. And then it's not just the skin, it's down into the musculature and even down into the bones. You might notice vibration. And so now we're sinking down maybe to the bottom of the ocean, just going where there's less and less change, but it's still water, it's still shifting, it's still all vibration. And so we wait for change. We notice it when it happens. Call it flow. You can pay attention to gons if you want, just paying attention to the whole body, and then notice when something disappears. Just one part of the body or one part of your experience changes into something else. I remind you, you can just focus on one small part of this experience. It's a different kind of meditation to expand to the whole body. At a certain point, you'd like your attention to not be jumping all over the body, but sort of sitting back in spaciousness and noticing the constant change. After you've done that for a while, you may do again what I said before. Is there a sort of part of your body that seems offline, that doesn't seem to be changing or seems numb, or it just your attention seems to be avoiding? And can you notice any change there? Can you notice the vibration, the heat, flow, the pressure, the change in that part of the body? Since we're already here with the body, if you want, you don't have to, but you can just include any emotional feel in the body if you haven't already. You're noticing the whole body. Now, notice the sensations in your body that might have an emotional quality to them. This is just a way of making sure you're not hiding from a part of the body that you sort of identified with. And notice if that feeling part of your body changes as well. Notice it when it goes away, gone, maybe just a part of it. Notice it when it begins, or just how it shifts and vibrates. It's a useful practice because you can sort of notice when you've stopped being present because you've gotten stuck. There's not any change happening. That means your mind has sort of gone back to its old habit of just saying, there's the body. Now I'm going to go think about stuff. If you're staying present with the body, you'll be noticing it's like a body of water. It's constantly changing. It's like a stream or an ocean. It's constantly flowing and shifting, including your emotional body. There's wisdom in sort of feeling your way through a practice like this. Do you find yourself, is it starting to get uncomfortable? Maybe that's because your attention is starting to get a little fixated on something emotional that's challenging. And you don't need to do that. You don't want to run away from that feeling, but you can either focus in and really notice that even that uncomfortable feeling, wherever it is changing, or you can give a little bit more attention to the resourceful aspects of your breathing experience, like, oh, that part of the body is also nice and changing, because the flow of things can be very pleasant. If you find yourself starting to suffer in any way, it's because you've gotten stuck in a way. And it's not, I mean, doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, but it gives you an opportunity to notice where that stuckness is and notice the flow that's in the stuckness. If that's not available to you today, then go move somewhere else that is not stuck, that has flow and resource in it. Same instructions as I've always given, but it really requires wisdom for you to feel your way to what's going to be most useful to you today. Ultimately, this practice moves us into an experience where we realize no part of the ocean is separate from any other part of the ocean. That, yeah, there's slight differences here and there, but it's all vibrating and flowing together in one big flowing process. And that is the breath, but it's also the rest of our body and our emotional life. And as we move on here, if you want to finish up going bigger, you can, and or you can go back to something resourceful. So as always, I want you to finish the practice in a way that makes you feel most grounded. If you're feeling really good in this flowing experience, then you can see if you can expand that to the rest of your sensory world. That will include my voice in the auditory world. That'll include the blank behind your eyelids, or you could even open your eyes. That'll also include inside your mind flowing and changing. It's one of the best ways to work with mind is to work with it in its flow. So when does the mind appear and when does it disappear? How is it changing? But anywhere something appears, anywhere something disappears, anywhere something transforms into something else, anywhere something gets a little smaller or a little bigger, a little less intense or a little more intense, that is flow. And to catch a change, you have to be in the present moment. And again, the far end of this practice is to notice that all these parts of you, all these modalities, all the things you feel, see, and hear, inside and out, they're all part of the same flowing ocean of vibration. And although there's little differences between them, you can start to notice that the boundaries are artificial, that it's all flowing, it's all contracting and expanding. And it's only the mind that holds parts of it separate. And it's okay that you're probably still experiencing those parts, but maybe you can notice the parts that feel more separate and less separate. You'll start to get a taste of what it's like for the inner and outer world to flow together, for the physical and emotional world to flow together, for the top of your head and the bottom of your feet to flow together, to my voice and your lungs to flow together. Your idea of yourself to flow along with the sound of the wind outside. Okay, that's where we're going to end for today. As always, now transition out of your meditation while maintaining the meditative attitude. As you transition out, there's flow. Can you pay attention to that flow with presence, with acceptance? And listen to your body, how it wants to move. Maybe you want to continue sitting, that's fine. Maybe it's time to stretch. Listen to those desires. They arise in the body as flow, and let them flow into behavior, as long as they are not going to harm you or anyone else. And we'll see you next week. If you want to come join us for the Zoom discussion, you're always welcome.